Right, back to our program. Okay, so we've now got this get ATCO bounds. We know what that is. That gets the bus stop from the bounds that we present it, and it returns just a list of stops, and we created our own JSON sort of dictionary there. So what we're going to do is have a function which just gets those stops. Okay, so if I have a function def get local being close rather than locality to home, get local stops. What we're going to do is keep trying it until we find something with a stop that is near. Remember, we could end up with no stops at all. So if we put in a load of nonsense, okay, we could end up with no stops. We're really testing this value if we end up with no stops whatsoever. We only really want to continue if we've got some stops to actually map. If we haven't, we're going to ask the user to have another go. So I'm going to have a while loop, and I'm going to say, you know, while I haven't got anything, keep trying. So let's say valid equals false, and while not valid, loop. So this is where I want to pick up my address, because I'm going to ask them to keep putting in an address. If the first one doesn't work, put another one in. Okay, so address is my get address function. Okay, that's going to return an address or nothing at all, just nonsense. And then I'm going to try doing this call. Okay, I'm going to try doing this call. So let me just copy that. I'm going to change it a little bit, I think. Be a bit more sensible. So in here, remember, we're not going to do the function. We're just going to do the address that we got back from get address, and instead of having result, I'm going to call it bus stops, because that's what it will be, is a list of bus stops for a particular address. So we're going to try that, and if we get that, then I'm going to break out of the loop by saying that valid is true. Okay. However, if we don't get any bus stops, I'm going to give the user a message, say print cannot find any stops, cannot find any stops near and I'm going to replace that with a format in a minute. Try a different address dot format format address. So I'm going to tell them what address they typed in, just in case they made a mistake. If everything is fine, so it's going to keep asking them for an address, so it's going to check if there's any bus stops. If there are bus stops and we don't get an error, then I'm going to return the bus stops to the caller. So we can save that, and we can test that that works. So if I come back down to here, result is now get local stops, and we're not passing any information this time because it's checking the address inside there. We can print the result when we get them. So let's just save that and test that one. So running the program, saying postcode. You might want to try different addresses, but if you know something's happening, it's better to stick with the same one. Apart from the fact that we always end up with problems when we copy and paste. So there we go, it's worked, it's returned bus stops, but what happens if we put in something completely bananas? It's telling me that now. Stops are empty. Okay, so what happens if I put in something which is ridiculous? I should get no stops as well. There we go. So I put in some ridiculous value. So it actually tried to find a town called Bananas and said there's no stops near Bananas. This one said it was absolute nonsense. I couldn't find anything on Google Earth that matched that. It says we have a problem. The address appears to be nonsense. There's nothing within the bounds, and tells me that I haven't got any stops. Just to point out, I've been using postcodes at the moment. We don't need to use postcodes. We can use sort of town names. I like this one, bus station Gloucester. You don't need to put in postcodes to make this work. Bananas, bus station Gloucester, and it will go off and it will go and find all the bus stops at the bus station. So we've got three things there. We can either have a valid postcode or an actual valid address, or we can have something that can't be found on Google Earth, that Google knows nothing about, or we can have complete nonsense that doesn't even attempt to find anything on Google Earth. So there we go. We've now got our get local stops, so that we know at the end we're either going to have nothing at all. So each time, even for the nonsense attempt, we ended up with no stops. And for a regular correct working one, we ended up with stops with an array of items. So we're either going to have nothing or we're going to have something. And we're going to make use of that to ask the user to re-put their data in.